Morning on the program to discuss the campaign and the issues of the day. The Assistant Treasurer, Senator Nick Sherry. Senator, thank you very much for your time.
Morning, Kieran. Good morning to your viewers.
Mark Latham was sitting in, I think, that chair or one next to it last night, having a good spray at Kevin Rudd, saying what many in Labor believe, that he was the leak, that if he is, he should come out and do it openly.
Well, I believe...
Well, you can't leak openly, but, you know, make the claims openly.
Well, I believe Kevin Rudd's a man of integrity and honesty. I've always found that in my long friendship with Kevin. He's focusing rightly on his own re-election in his own seat. And Julia Gillard, the Prime Minister, has made it very clear anyone who leaks will be disciplined.
So, but how do you know who is doing it? Because the journalist isn't going to say. It seems... that many in Labor believe it is the former Prime Minister. How does she work out who's responsible?
Well, leaks in politics are not new. They haven't just started in the last week. In my long experience in politics over 20 years, leaks do occur from time to time. But I notice on the other side of politics, Mr Turnbull's still got a leadership baton in his backpack. He's still wanting to be leader of the opposition. We've got a split between the National Party and the Liberal Party on important economic policy, foreign investment. I think people forget that the Liberal Party can't govern without the National Party. And in this case, the National Party is opposing the comments by Mr Hockey on foreign investment.
But having Mark Latham, a former leader, make these comments, this intervention can't help. I just want to recap a little bit of what he had to say last night on Sky News on the Paul Murray Live program.
I think it's the coward's way to get on the blower with Laurie Oakes and say, I'll tell you this, but you're not allowed to identify me. You know, it's the snake's way. So I'd challenge Kevin Rudd to be a man, to be honest, to have some honour, and actually, if he feels this strongly about it, put his name to his words.
Mark Latham there on Paul Murray Live last night. Typically colourful?
Well, I've known Mark and Kevin, but as I say, Kevin's a man of integrity. I've known him for a long time, and we've seen today another outbreak of division in the Liberal ranks.
I know you're trying to distract to the Liberals. We'll get to that in a moment.
I mean, that's the headline of the day.
No, I'll ask you about that in a moment. But there's a few other headlines I want to look at, and that is the Herald, Sydney Morning Herald, front page, ALP plea to Kevin Rudd to campaign with candidates in Queensland. Now, how ironic is this, if this story is 100% right, that ALP strategists believe Kevin Rudd is such a positive in Queensland that they're going to have to recruit the former leader to campaign with the candidates there. It seems a bit absurd.
From my personal experience and long association with Kevin Rudd, as I say, he's a man of integrity. He's focusing, and he always has, to his great credit, focused on his electorate of Griffith. He's a very strong, effective member. That's his role as a backbencher, and he's campaigning very hard, and that's where he's rightly focused.
But what about this report that ALP strategists want him to join other candidates to boost you in Queensland?
Kevin's made it very, very clear. He's focusing on his local electorate. That's always been a prime responsibility for him since he's been a Member of Parliament from day one, and he's a very, very effective local member.
So you obviously don't think he'd be too welcome in other campaigns, in other candidates, because every time he's in the media, he's a distraction from Julia Gillard.
No, well, what I would argue is, as a backbencher and as a long-term backbencher who's always been a very strong and local effective member, that's where he's focusing. That's where he's focusing. He does a very, very good job.
But you're at risk of losing 10 seats in Queensland. Why wouldn't you use everything you can to boost your campaign, pull out the Queensland, because they can be parochial there?
That's speculation about... let's see what happens on election night. But Kevin's a very effective local member. As I've said, I've known him for a long time. He's a man of integrity, and he's rightly focusing on his local backyard and his own electorate.
OK, let's go to Sophie Mirabella now, the Shadow Minister for Industry. Sophie Mirabella. Well, basically, you've got Mark Latham making an intervention and the ALP looking back to Kevin Rudd. This has just got to be manna from heaven for Tony Abbott.
Well, the one thing we've seen is there's no certainty with Labor. This is a shambolic circus. This is the bloke they knifed spectacularly. Now they're thinking, gee, we've made a mistake, and are desperate and will say and do anything. will say and do anything to win. They will say and do anything to suck up to Kevin Rudd, to stop the obvious shambolic appearance of their whole campaign. Here we have a party that was so consumed with who was going to be leader, how they were going to con the Australian people. They forgot about the need to cut the waste. They forgot about the need to stop borrowing $100 million a day. They can't have the time to do the things that Australians want, to cut the waste, to pay back the debt, because they're preoccupied with looking over their shoulder. No wonder Julia Gillard doesn't want to look back, because she's scared at what she'll find. And now we know that, you know, Kevin Rudd's been lurking in the shadows, and it's very disappointing for Australians who are looking for leadership at a time of great uncertainty and anxiety. They're worried about how they're going to pay next week's bills, not who's still friendly in the Labor Party and who's going to knife who. They obviously cannot govern, because they can't even present a united front during an election campaign. And what we do know about Mark Latham is he does wear his heart on his sleeve, and at least he's one person in the Labor Party who at the moment is saying it as it is.
Well, you're joining us from Liberal Party headquarters in Melbourne, and I'm sure there would have been some eyebrows raised at the story in the Australian Financial Review, Sophie Mirabella, when Malcolm Turnbull was asked if he still carries the leadership baton. Turnbull didn't hesitate. Of course, he says. So it's not something which is simply a characteristic of one side of politics, leadership tensions, is it?
Ambition is common to all politicians. We wouldn't be here if we didn't have ambitions for our nation, ambitions to do the very best. But the big difference is that Malcolm Turnbull's quite honestly saying, sure, just like any other member of the House of Representatives, I'm ambitious. Compare that to Julia Gillard, who lied to the Australian people, who a few weeks before she knifed Kevin Rudd, said, I've got more of a chance of playing full forward for the Western Bulldogs than taking over from Kevin Rudd. Now, as soon as she had the numbers, as soon as the numbers men said, Kevin Rudd's no good to us, she knifed him spectacularly. Now, look at the dishonesty there. Look at the power games. No wonder Julia Gillard is now scrambling to get Kevin Rudd on side, because Australians have woken up to the fact that she hasn't been trying to govern. She hasn't been looking after her portfolio. She's presided over billions of dollars of wasted money. She hasn't put aside any thinking, any time on how she's going to pay back the debt, and Labor is now scrambling because they've realised that Australians are waking up to the fact and saying, what is the Labor Party on about? Why aren't they talking about our concerns? Why aren't they concerned about my increase in costs of living? Why aren't they concerned about turning back the boats? We've had 150 boats now. That's not a record Labor should be proud of, and Australians are rightly concerned whether they're in Western Sydney, whether they're in Queensland, or whether they're in Melbourne.
Let's come back to leadership.
Let's have
the
Nick
Liberal
respond.
Party has had 3 leaders in 3 years. I mean, Mr Abbott stabbed Mr Turnbull. Mr Abbott stabbed Mr Turnbull. They've had 3 leaders. This has been the revolving door. The Liberal Party's been the revolving door of Australian politics over the last 3 years. Front benches coming and going all the time. It's been the most unstable political party in the entire Western world, the Liberal Party, over the last 3 years. So how they can affect... Well, Sophie laughs, but the facts are they've had 3 leaders, Sophie. You've had 3 leaders in the last 3 years. How can you effectively govern? Today you've got a split between the National Party and the Liberal Party. You split on foreign investment, a crucial area of economic policy.
Let's hear Sophie respond.
Now, you're totally misrepresenting things, and I know you're getting very excited, but you should be getting excited about solving Australians' problems, not covering up the shambolic, dysfunctional Labor Party that you are a member of. It's all being exposed. You're all getting very upset about it. But what we're focused on is actually providing direct action to solve people's problems, to actually govern for Australia.
Sophie, what's your policy on foreign investment?
You can talk about all these sorts of distractions.
Sophie, what's your policy on foreign investment?
You can talk about all these sorts
an important
of
economic policy. What's your focus? What's your policy on foreign investment? Because you're split today between the National Party and the Liberal Party.
Let's hear what she's got to say.
No, there isn't. There isn't. What Tony Abbott would do if he was Prime Minister, he would actually pick up the phone and talk to the leader of China, talk to the leader of Japan, unlike Julia Gillard, who is so distracted with Kevin Rudd lurking in the shadows, so distracted with the factional bosses trying to tell her what to do, that she doesn't even have the time to speak.
I'm going to have to pause there. Sorry, we didn't cut Sophie Mirabella off there. That was a technical problem with our Streambox technology, so do not think that I cut her off there, because I didn't. I was actually just going to throw to a break. Unfortunately, we had a problem with the technology, but we'll be right back. Hopefully, Sophie will join us then. Welcome back to AM Agenda. With me from Liberal Party campaign headquarters, Sophie Mirabella, and here in the Sky News Centre, the Assistant Treasurer, Nick Sherry. Sophie, back to you. Just, you were making a point before the break. Unfortunately, we had a dropout there. I'll let you continue. Just pick up where you left off.
Sure.
I didn't want to cut you off.
My point was that if the Labor Party can't do the right thing by each other, how can they do the right thing by Australia? In terms of foreign policy, Julia Gillard is so distracted with Kevin Rudd lurking in the shadows, with the factional bosses pulling the strings, with trying to keep all the different dysfunctional members of the Labor family happy. She didn't even have the time to pick up the phone to ring two of our most important trading partners, China and Japan. Nick I can understand his upset. This is a very important election for the Labor Party, but you know what, Nick? This is even more important for the Australian people.
The issue we were talking about...
they deserve a government.
Sophie,
Nick,
you're not addressing the issue, Sophie. The issue went to the foreign investment issue, the split between the National Party and the Liberal Party. Mr Cobb disagreed.
There's no split. The report... Mr Cobb has clarified that.
Has he? Has he?
Well, do you want me to you've asked the question?
You've got an important
Manners cost
split
you nothing,
between
Nick.
the
Let
two.
me finish, mate.
You've got a split and you're not dealing with the issue.
Let's hear the response.
Saying something often enough that you've been fed by Labor Party headquarters won't make it right, mate. You've got to speak straight to the Australian people. Mr Cobb has said this morning he doesn't support that register. That is incorrect. What he does support, which is totally consistent with what Mr Hockey has said, which all Australians would agree with, is that we need to monitor. We need to monitor foreign investment. And what Australian wouldn't want you to know, wouldn't want their government to know what level of foreign investment exists in Australia.
Okay, so there's the answer on that. Let's go to another issue.
The next line.
Let's go to the other issue now. The National Broadband Network, 300,000 more homes to be included, announced today by Julia Gillard in WA apparently. But these sorts of positive stories about the broadband and other things just get consumed, like this program today, most of it about leadership. You want it on things like on positive stories like this, but it gets caught up in everything else.
Well, Kieran, it is a very positive story. I mean, it's about strengthening the Australian economy. A modern broadband is vital to strengthen the Australian economy, and Mr Abbott wants to scrap it. He wants to scrap it. They had almost 12 years to sort out broadband, and it was an absolute shambles. So it is a vital and an important part of modernising the Australian economy, connecting 93% of Australian homes, connecting schools, businesses and homes to a modern broadband system. It's a very important announcement.
Is it frustrating that it gets distracted, that other issues distract from that?
Well, it's an important policy, and I think there'll be major focus on it. And it's about taking the economy forward, strengthen the economy, and I'm very proud of our record on the economy. And this is a vital part of modernising and moving the Australian economy forward. As I say, Mr Abbott wants to scrap national broadband. They have nothing to replace it with.
Okay, let's look at the issue of the Coalition's climate change plan. Sophie Mirabella, $300 million a year for the next decade, apparently, just to convert one dirty power station into a cleaner energy form. And prices could still rise, apparently, according to the report today by Lenore Taylor in the Herald. This must be a bit of a worry to you. I mean, have you really got the numbers right on this policy?
We have got the numbers right. Greg Hunt is an extraordinary shadow minister, and hopefully he'll get a chance to be a minister in the interests of lower electricity prices and the environment. We are unashamedly the party of low electricity prices. The Labor Party stands for high electricity prices. We've seen from the New South Wales regulator, they've said that the government's ETS policy would push electricity prices an additional 20%. Kevin Rudd has admitted it would push prices up by 19%.